All right. Well, we've got a few folks joining us. I think we had a handful more RSVPs that are likely going to join us here. And so we'll make sure those guys get in as we get started. But my name is Joe Massey. I'm with Castle and Cook Mortgage, and I've been a part of the Your Castle First Alliance team for more than 13 years now. And my job is to be a resource for you to help with anything that you need for your buyer's loans, your loans, any type of permanent residential transactions. So single family homes, condos, townhomes, your primary residence, second homes in the mountains, investment properties, any of your buyers that need long-term mortgages to buy a home, definitely reach out. I would love to chat with you about it. And our esteemed guests today, my co-host, Mr. Jerrod Paterson. Who are you?
Hey guys, I'm Jerrod Paterson, First Alliance Title, and I've been in the real estate world for over 30 years now. Started off on your side of the business for 22 years in Pennsylvania and sold over 800 homes in my career. So I'm here to be a resource. I love sitting down with people and analyzing their business. I have a few that I am an accountability partner to. So I hear all the time that I want to achieve a certain level of business, and my job is to sit down and help you achieve that goal by seeing what you're doing on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. So feel free to reach out to me and let me know how I can help you.
Outstanding. And guys, if you have not worked with First Alliance Title, I would highly encourage you to. I highly encourage you to. I've worked with them for hundreds of transactions, and they do just an absolutely outstanding job. And our presenter today, Mr. Eric Romero, has been in the real estate business for 33 years, I do believe, and managing broker of Your Castle Real Estate. Just an absolutely fantastic educator and instructor and a great managing broker. And he's got a great topic for us today, how to thrive in a changing market. And I think we can all agree that the market is changing. It has been changing over the last several years. And he is going to give us some tips, tricks, ideas, important things that we need to understand on how to succeed in the current market. So, Mr. Romero, take it away. We are so grateful that you've made the time.
He's a pretty good human being too, Joe. You didn't say that.
That's true. And he's in space. He's in outer space.
Yeah,
He's coming to us from the moon.
exactly.
Yeah, people always tell me I'm in outer space, so I figured the background was appropriate. So, well, thanks for the nice intro. That's awesome, and I also have done a lot of deals with Joe and Jerrod and have been completely happy. And one of the things that makes us successful, I believe, is who we do business with. The title company that's going to make us look good at the closing, the lender that's going to make us look good on the loan side. And, nothing's worse than a lender that messes up a deal or a title company that messes something up. So who you hang out with is really important. And I like hanging out with these guys. So back at you. So yeah, Joe mentioned I'm Eric Romero. I'm at Your Castle, been at Your Castle now for 14 years, in real estate now for 34. And today's going to be more of a conversation. I don't want you to think of it as a lecture where you're going to sit here and listen to us talk. We're going to bring up the slides. We're going to talk about the slides and what makes the class excellent versus just good, in my opinion, is when you all ask questions. And unfortunately, I can't see any of you. The way we're set up here, I can see the presenters, but I can't see the rest of you. But yeah, just unmute yourself if you want to ask a question. Raise your hand, whatever works for you. Type it into the chat, and don't be afraid to ask a question or interrupt us. And if it's something that we're going to cover at some future slide, I'll let you know. So we're going to start off with a little story here. And I see this happening in the market quite a bit. So you have the man who sold hot dogs on the side of the road, couldn't hear, so he didn't have a radio, couldn't see very well, so he didn't read newspapers, but he sold a lot of hot dogs, put up signs on the highway letting people know how good they were, stood on the side of the road, yelled at everybody, to buy a hot dog, and people bought hot dogs. He kept buying more meat, more buns, bought a bigger stove because business was doing so well. Well, then his son came home from college, and we'll say that the metaphor we'll use for the son home from college is maybe the media right now, right? So the son came home from college and was going to help him out, but this is how it went down. The son said, "Hey, father, haven't you been listening to the radio? Haven't you been reading the papers? There's a big depression. Europe's terrible. The domestic situation's even worse." So then it got into the dad's head, and he says, well, my son's very smart. So I think what I'm going to do is cut back on my meat and bun orders. I'm going to spend a little less on advertising, and I'm not going to get out on the highway and flag people down to buy my hot dogs. And guess what happened? His sales fell overnight. And he said, you're right, son. We certainly are in the middle of a Great Depression. So this story, John Waters, one of our agents, sent this to me a few years ago. And I love this because it's exactly what I see happening in real estate. I see agents, sales are down a little bit, so they're going to market a little bit less. I'm not going to network as much. I'm not going to do all these things that I need to do versus doing more of the things that they need to do. So just a cool little story. I'm going to get into some stats here, and then we're going to get into some other things. But I think it's important. One of the things that you need to know as an agent, if you want to be a pro, is you need to understand what's going on in the market, not just what the media says, not just what other agents might tell you. But this came directly from the Denver Metro Association of Realtors trends report for last month. Shows the median close price right at 600,000, down a tick. Doesn't mean prices are going down, but it does mean that the average price is going down, which tells you that there are less of the more expensive homes selling. And we are definitely seeing more inventory on the, say, $1.5 million and up homes. Those homes are there's more on the market. They're sitting a little bit longer. That makes the median price come down a tick. Still pretty high, especially if you compare it to other places in the country. 600K is the average. I can remember not long ago where it was under 4, maybe. I don't know, Joe or Jerrod, if you remember, but it didn't seem like that long ago.
Hasn't been that long. If we were to go back and look, it's probably 17
months.
18.
I was going to say pre 2020, somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can see 4,100, basically 4,200 transactions closed last month. That's an uptick from the month before. And right below that, you can see months of inventory, 2.18. That is higher than it's been for a while. I would say at least a year. And that means that we're seeing a little bit of an increase in inventory, which, in theory is going to be a little bit more buyer friendly. The reality is it's still not enough months of inventory to where the buyer is probably going to notice it much. They might go out and find 2 houses they like instead of just one, but it's certainly still not putting the ball in the buyer's court as far as having the advantage in the negotiations, at least not yet. And then check it out, the median days in the MLS, 9 days, and that's a slight uptick. So 9 days in the MLS, that's still remarkably low. So what we're seeing is we're still seeing a seller's market, but a little bit less pressure maybe on buyers. And I just like this slide because it goes back 5 years. And you can see, in 2020, we had 7,170 listings on the market year to date. This year we have 9,000. So a little bit of an uptick there. You can see the closed transactions are down. So in 2020, we had 19,605 year to date. So far this year, we've got 17,148. So, closed volume is still down about, 27% from what it was in 2020. And I don't know where we're going to go from here, but I think what we've seen in 2023 and thus far in 2024, if I had to speculate, is going to just carry on into 2025, if I had to guess. Because the one thing that we're not going to see likely, in my opinion, and Joe might talk about it a little bit more later, I don't know if we're going to see a big drop in rates. Although, Joe, you said we saw a little bit of a decrease this week, right?
Yeah, just today, interest rates improved. But, one-day movement in interest rates does not create a trend. So, there was at the beginning of the year, there was a lot of hope and speculation that by the end of the year, interest rates would be at 6%, 5.5%. all of that speculation has been completely wiped out. Everything we see is predicting interest rates to be between 6.75 and 7.5 by the end of the year. So hoping, or having buyers that are hoping and praying for interest rates to come down, and that's what's going to push them off the fence, they're likely to wait for a really long time on that.
Agree. What sort of a strategy is hope, Joe?
Hope is not a strategy. That's like saying, I hope I win the lottery. I don't think hope is a very good strategy at all.
Yeah, agree. It's not, but we hear it all the time. I hope rates come down. I hope taxes come down. I hope insurance. I hope my guy wins the presidency. Hope, hope, hope. And people make a lot of, well, I was going to say make a lot of decisions. I think people postpone a lot of important decisions, hoping something's going to change, and then they end up missing a lot of opportunities.
I agree.
Instead of having a plan.
Don't get me wrong. Buying a house sucks right now if you're a buyer, especially a first-time home buyer. But you know what sucks more? Not having a house.
Right.
Yeah, renting. So sometimes you have to pick your level of suck, right? And then I like this chart here. This just shows, we hear a lot of people talk about how prices are going to drop. And when you look at this chart, if you go back, I can't see the numbers at the bottom. I think all the way to the left there is 2008.
January of 2008.
Yeah, the green line is the number of active listings, and you can see the yellow line across the bottom is the number of closed transactions. And you can see that in 2008, we're closing, 5,000 a month. We had almost 30,000 homes on the market. So basically 6 months of inventory is when you see prices come down, because that is when we saw prices coming down. Well, then you get, further to the right of the graph, and you can see there's very little separation between the number of active listings on the market versus the number sold. Currently, there's a bigger spread than we've seen for a while, which is why there is going to be a little bit less pressure on buyers. And I think that's going to improve for buyers even over the summer a bit, because we do see more listings come on in the summer and we see a few less buyers. So that means that the buyers we may be at 3 months of inventory by the end of July. We'll see, 2.5 months. But the point of this slide is just to show you really need to be on the left of the chart here to see a real change in prices, at least as far as prices coming down. And there's nothing to show us that there's anything coming that's going to force a lot of inventory to hit the market, that's going to create that environment where you see sellers, when a seller's competing against 6 or 7 other homes, they'll lower their price, they'll offer incentives, they'll do what they need to do to get their house sold, which brings prices down a bit. We just don't have that kind of pressure on sellers yet. Now, having said that, if you're an overly optimistic seller that thinks you're going to be able to put your crappy house on the market and get top dollar, well, that's not going to work either, right? Where in 2021, you could probably do that as a seller because there was nothing out there, right? If there's one glass of water out there, you'll drink a glass of dirty water if you're thirsty, but when you have choices, you won't. So let's just talk about some things affecting the industry. This is something that most of you have heard about, I hope. Your clients are getting really horrible information, but if you're not actively adapting to some of these changes that are coming regarding this National Association of Realtors settlement, and this is not a class on that, by the way, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole. I have other classes for that. But you really need to understand how this is actually going to affect you. And that's why you need to take some classes. You need to read some of the settlement. You need to not pay attention to what the media says. I talked to one of our agents the other day. Her seller told her, well, I want to sell my house and I'm willing to pay a buyer's agent, but somebody told me that when I moved to North Carolina, you have to pay your own agent. So why do I have to not pay my agent here, but I do have to pay my agent there? Well, the reality is the settlement rules are the same for everybody. There's no different in one state versus another state. It's just the person she was talking to in the other state didn't know what the hell they were talking about, right? So some key takeaways. The NAR settlement doesn't have a thing to do with what you charge. You can charge the same fee you've always charged, but you just can't put it in the MLS, right? So if you're a seller and you're selling a property, the buyer's agents out there, when they find your listing in the MLS, are not going to see in the MLS what the compensation being offered is. Doesn't mean there won't be compensation. There might be, but you're just not going to see that number. And the reason for that is the whole lawsuit was about sellers claiming that buyer agent fees were overly inflated and or fixed because the fact that they were advertised meant that some agents out there would only show the homes that paid the higher commissions and might exclude the homes that paid the lower commissions. So if the fee isn't there, well, then there's no way to sort what an agent shows based on the compensation being offered. And I know you're all sitting there going, oh, I would never do that. Well, I would never do that either, but apparently they found enough emails from agents that did to be able to show that there might have been some agents not doing what they should have done. So
yeah, a lot of people did do it, even though everybody on this call would never do it, but a lot of people did.
A lot of people did, and then they put it in writing like idiots. So left messages on machines. So nothing sets or lowers the fees. Our fees have always been negotiable. But one thing I will say is because of the information that's out there, your clients are going to be talking to you about it, and they're going to have some unsubstantiated beliefs. One is that they don't have to pay, or that they're going to think that by you letting them know that they're allowed to negotiate, that means you have to negotiate. And if you can't show your value, then you're going to have a really hard time getting through the next era of real estate. So the myth is sellers or their agents can't pay a buyer agent commission. That's false. The seller or the seller's agent can pay a commission to a buyer's agent, just like they've always been able to do. However, there's nothing in the MLS anymore. And that means that because there's no offer of compensation in the MLS, that you as a buyer's agent, before you go out and start showing houses, will need to have an agreement signed with your buyer where you discuss how you're going to get paid. And that discussion might be, we're going to try to get the seller to pay it, right? But you can't just run off and show houses anymore without having some sort of an agreement in place on how you're going to get paid. Well, let me rephrase that. You can, you just probably won't get paid. And real estate's way more fun when you get paid. So this starts in August. So as far as what affects your buyers, starting in August or sooner, buyers are going to have to sign agreements before they can go out and look at homes. Now, my advice to you would be don't wait till August. You should be doing that now. By the way, in Colorado, little factoid, as long as we've had buyer agency, which has been at least probably close to 30 years, buyers were supposed to be signing agreements anyway if they wanted you to be their agent. But agents were like, yeah, I'll worry about that later. I'm not going to have my buyers sign anything. We're going to go look at a couple houses first, make sure we like each other. And then if everything works out, well, then maybe I'll have them sign something the same time we go under contract. You shouldn't have been doing that anyway, but we're now being forced into doing it the right way. So it shouldn't be that big of a learning curve, but it will be for some. Buyers still need to be cautious about thinking that the market is more in their favor than it is. I still talk to agents every day who are competing in multiple offer situations, but it's got to be the right house, right neighborhood, right price. If you're putting that, crappy house out there that's not staged well and it's 20 grand overpriced, well, that house will sit there. But if you're putting the sweet house with a great location and you're not getting greedy on the price, that sucker's gone. So your buyers need to understand that. And don't ask me why there's a number 5 in front of the number 3 here. But Joe already touched on this a little bit. where buyers shouldn't really wait for rates to come down, and they might at some point. They might come down, but man, I'll tell you, it's really feeling like we've been at where we're at now for what, 2 years, Joe, ish.
Yeah, it was March of 22 when interest rates crossed over 4%, and there's been no sign of relief since that time. So rates crossed over 4%. Everybody started saying, I'm going to wait for rates to come down. If you didn't buy a house in March of 22, guess what? Rates were very rapidly at 7% by the end, or actually at 8% by the end of 23. And so hoping that they're going to go back down at that same pace, not a great strategy.
And I don't know about you, but I don't see any change for 12 to 18 months.
No.
Well, and if we do see a change, I don't think it's going to be
massive.
It's not going to be substantial. I mean,
exactly.
you might get into the low sixes maybe, and I hate to try to predict anything because honestly, I never thought we'd see, sub 3%. To finish that thought, though, I also never thought we'd see a pandemic shutting down the economy that basically forced that to happen. Right? They had to cut rates to those extreme lows just to try to keep the economy going. And a lot of what they did during the pandemic is what's causing the inflationary period that we're in now, which is also why they're raising rates. It's like, oh, wait a minute, you're spending way too much money. We need to make it too expensive for you to buy stuff so that you'll back off and maybe prices will come down a little. It's kind of interesting how all of our problems are caused by the government, just saying. So anyway, yeah, don't wait for the rates. But these are the things that are going to affect your buyers coming up. And there could be a lot more detail in here. But your buyer opportunities, I think, are, now I know why number 5 was in there, because number 3 and number 4 rolled in late. So Joe and I just finished this PowerPoint this morning. We had to update it from before. So you guys are going to be in for all kinds of surprises today, because I literally don't know what might pop up on the next slide.
We're probably going to be surprised too.
I just was. So the buyers still need to put their best foot forward, because it's not 2008 where if deal number 1 didn't work out, you just went to deal number 2. If it didn't work out, you went to deal number 3. We still have a very low inventory environment. So if a buyer loves a house and they start playing too many games, they might lose that house to another buyer. And then of course they'll be frustrated. So I do think they still need to, they don't have to waive all their contingencies like maybe they did 3 years ago. But they still can't just throw a low ball out there and expect it to stick. Now, once a house has been on the market for 14, 21 days-ish, well, those sellers are starting to get a little bit nervous. So you might be able to get away with a under list price offer on some of those. But if you're one of these buyers who's looking at the new listings every day and running out daily, looking at the brand new listings, those are the ones that are tough to negotiate on, because the seller still feels like they're in control that first few days on the market. So if you're a seller, you need to be aware of the fact that guess what happens in the summer, right? Starting about now.
Showings get slimmer.
Showings slow down. Why do you think that is, Jerrod?
Vacations, people, it's, there's a certain period of they need to be in before school starts. Things like that. I think they're your 2 major factors.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, most school starts within the first week or 2 of August now.
Yep.
Yeah.
And people want to be settled into their house by then.
Yep.
So they certainly want to be closed before then, which is why I think July it's always a toss up between June and July for being our busiest months for closings. So if you close in July, it means you probably went under contract in May or June. If you close in June, you probably went under contract in, April or May. And those are the busiest months for showings. So if you're a seller and you're like, wow, it's July, it's really convenient for me to sell my house right now. Well, it might be convenient, but it's going to be slower. You're not going to get a March price in July. Which also makes sellers think that It makes sellers think that the market's worse than it is. It's like, no, it's just, you just put your house on the market the wrong time of the year, right? Sellers don't understand that they might have missed the spring selling season. That's your job as the broker when you go out on these listings, is to make sure that you show them the trends reports that mention how many showings you get in the spring, how many showings you get, in the summer. Because it's real easy for sellers to go, hey, look, my neighbor's house sold in March for 600. I should easily be able to get 625 for mine because I have a bird feeder. And it's like, no, you might actually get less than your neighbor got because their timing was better than yours, right? So I hear agents say all the time, well, the comps tell me I'm priced right. Well, the comps might tell you one thing, but the market's telling you something else. So you have to be really good at explaining data to your consumer. And I like the DMAR reports. So I'm going to take a break here, and I'm going to let Joe talk a little bit about maybe how to negotiate a deal, even in the higher interest rate environment that we have now, higher than we've had. So Joe, go ahead and take over. Now, can you run this, or do I need to run it on my side?
I am pretty sure. Yep, I can write, and you don't have to do anything other than I'll just tell you when we go to the next slide. And the next slide is yours, so that'll put you back in control. So what we're looking at here is exactly what Eric was just commenting on, is properties that have been sitting for a while might give you some room to negotiate. All right. And you can, oftentimes people just want to negotiate for a lower price. And so let's just make up a property. Let's say it has a $600,000 list price. All right. And you say, hey, this has been on the market for 30 days. The seller's getting upset. The listing agent's getting upset. We're going to go in there and we're going to work them down on the price and get it down to $575,000. And our buyer's putting 5% down. All right. So we're going to have a new loan of $546,000 at an average interest rate today of 6.875. That monthly payment is going to be $3,588. And we're only putting 5% down, so we're going to have mortgage insurance of $120. So what you get is this payment of $3,700. Now you feel really good if you're the buyer's agent. You're like, hey, I got them $25,000 off of list price. I feel great about this. Okay. Now something you might consider, because $25,000 is a big number. That's more than 4% of the value of the property. And so it might be really tough to negotiate for that. So another option, which is on the right, is instead of negotiating for a price reduction, let's negotiate for 3% in seller concessions, which is the equivalent of $18,000. So $600,000 times 3%. And then you can use that $18,000 to do a few things. Number one, a 2-1 buy down. Number two, you can pay title insurance, homeowners insurance, taxes, HOA transfer fees, just about any type of prepaids and closing costs. And you can pay for one-time upfront mortgage insurance. So what does that do for the buyer? Well, we're getting a $600,000 loan with 5% down, $600,000 purchase price with 5% down gives us a $570,000 loan. Now the first year, they're going to be at 4.875 because it's a 2-1 buy down. So it's 2% lower in the first year. This is going to give them that payment of $3,136. Then in year number two, it's going to go up by 1 point because again, it's a 2-1 buy down. So their payment is then going to be, whoops, what did I do there? Now I can't draw. Their payment is going to be $3,491. And then in year three through year number 30, they're going to be at that exact same 6.875, that payment of $3,864. And what you'll notice on this, there's no mortgage insurance, right? There's no mortgage insurance because it was all paid with the seller concession. So what does this do for your buyer? Instead of having this payment of $3,136, instead of having this payment of $3,708, they get this new payment of $3,136. Now it is going to scale up in year number 2 and then in year number 3. But a lot of people think that interest rates are going to come down. So right here at the beginning of year number 3, they could refinance if they want to, right? Assuming that interest rates have come down. What you're doing in this scenario is taking the seller's excitement to sell a home, and they're now past 30 days, and you're saying, hey, we still want to buy your home. We know it's a little bit stale. We could offer $25,000 less, or we're going to ask you to give us $18,000 in closing costs. And this one on the right, I believe, works a heck of a lot better for the buyer, because on the right-hand side, they're going to save $572 a month, and they can always refinance in the future if rates are lower, and they're going to have an inflation-protected mortgage that if interest rates go up, they're only subject to this exact same interest rate for the next 30 years. And so this is a strategy that I see a lot of buyers are using, a lot of buyers agents are recommending in the current market, and it works really, really well. And it's not complicated. A lot of people struggle to understand a 2-1 buy down, but it's pretty simple. It's 2 years lower in the first year, 1% lower in the second year, and then it is that same fixed rate for the remaining 28 years of the loan. So this is a strategy I think you should focus on, particularly when you're looking at stuff that has become a little bit aged over that 30-day mark.
Hey, Joe.
Yes, sir.
Let's take it one step further and tell these people is you also refinance that loan for free if the loan goes down with them with the Custom Cook.
That's exactly right. So you can refinance for free. And one of my favorite questions that I get, well, what does free mean? Well, it means there's no cost. And they say, well, what do you mean there's no cost? Well, it means free. So there would be no closing costs on that transaction if you work with us on the initial purchase transaction, and we do the option on the right or the option on the left. You're going to get a voucher from us that you can refinance for free at any point in the future when interest rates decrease. So keep this in mind if you're looking at aged listings. Eric, back to you.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a win, because if you're one of the folks that's waiting because you want rates to come down, then you're going to go into this assuming rates are going to go down, and therefore you can
That's right.
later. Let's say you're wrong and rates don't go down, they go up. Well, then you're still going to feel like the rate you have is better than what you could currently get. So I don't see a downside to it. I would point out, though, if you're working with buyers, and I know this sounds easy, but it's more challenging because buyers, they get caught up, they get emotional, they get excited. This may not work on the brand new listing that's got 40 showings on it the first weekend in the coolest neighborhood that they've ever wanted to live in, right? It's because if you're competing with other buyers, there's a high likelihood that they might be paying cash. They might not be asking for a concession. So I'm not saying you've got no chance, but we do know that once a listing's been on the market for about a month, the sellers get a lot more flexible on what they're willing to do, and they'll at least look at your offer. And even things like a home sale contingency that a seller might not consider on their brand new listing. After a month, they might look at a home sale contingency. So I know a lot of times buyers don't want to look at the old listings, but there can be some real opportunities there. And some of the listings that have been on the market a while were overpriced when they were put on. Mm-hmm. But they may not be overpriced anymore because they might have lowered the price once or twice, and they got the price where they should have started. But now it's a stale listing because everyone's searching the new listings.
Yep.
So don't be afraid to look at those older listings and find your buyer a deal in there. Sometimes they're wow, look at that. Look what you did, Joe, to my screen.
Oh man. I was so fancy.
I told y'all we're winging this one today.
Hey,
I
also
going.
think, Eric, that's a great strategy for, not just owner occupied listings. That's great for especially first time investors. that are a little scared, right here, let's go in, let's find a great deal for a house that's been on the market for some time, and let's negotiate some things for you and let you become a first-time investor.
Well, the founder of Your Castle, Lon Welsh, will tell you, and I can't think of anyone who's probably a smarter investor than Lon. Will tell you that he buys the majority of his properties off the MLS.
Yep.
Because he's willing to sit down and run a lot of numbers and look at deals, and he'll find stuff on the MLS when everyone else is saying there's no deals on the MLS, right?
Yep. We hear about it all the time. There's no deals on the MLS. And I always say the same thing. That's true, except for all of the ones that are out there.
Yeah, right.
I see all the deals because we close them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. So, and then of course, new construction. And this, I think the important thing with new construction too is, one, you want to be, if you're with the buyer, if you're working with a buyer, you want to make sure you take them to the house on the first visit, because a lot of builders don't want to work with you if you're not there on the first visit. But there's some inventory homes out there, homes that are completed, where the builder wants to get those off the books. And you can find some good deals on those. And a lot of times they're offering financing incentives. They're buying the interest rates down. So there's some really good opportunities for new construction. And a lot of agents I talk to say, yeah, my clients, they wouldn't mind buying a new house, but the new construction is, it's far out east or whatever. And they want to live in Highlands. I just pick a neighborhood. Well, great. Well, first of all, can they afford Highlands? Well, not really, but they're hoping they'll find a deal. Okay, well, hope. What do we say about hope, right?
Not a great strategy.
Right. Or there's some other factor, whether it be, competitive offers. And so these buyers have a place that they want to live, but they really can't play necessarily in that market because of either the amount of a loan they can get or the amount of down payment they might need, or just, pick your poison. Or they could drive 30 minutes and be a homeowner. And I do think that with some buyers, a lot of it is adjusting their expectations. Would you rather keep hoping you can buy a house where you want to buy? Or would you rather be a homeowner, build up some equity, drive a little further, granted, and then the next house you can live where you want to live? Because most people will tell you, Jerrod, I'm sure with you, Joe, your first house is usually not the house you love, maybe not even the second house, but you take all the money you make on that deal and move it into the next deal, right? And each one gets a little bit better. So I think a lot of what we need to do with our buyers is set the expectations as well. So Joe, here's another slide for you.
Yeah, so on this one, I really like what you said there, Eric, that we need to set expectations. And one thing that everybody has forgotten about is, what was it like in January of 2022? Everybody was so excited. Man, I really want rates to go back to 3%. Can't wait. I'm going to keep waiting until rates go down. I hope they go down. Well, what did that come with? That came with something called a premium, or as I like to call it, an up payment, right? The house is listed for $600,000. We've got 10 offers on it. We get it under contract at $660,000, but it's only worth $600,000. Well, guess what? We have it under contract for $660,000. We have to pay that 10% premium, and we've got to put 20% down. Our down payment is $180,000. Now we got this really cool 3% rate at $4,800 a month. We've got this super low payment of $2,023. But what happens in today's market? Well, the value of this home has gone up. So the value of the home is now up to about $650,000. And you can buy it today and pay no premium, right? Unless it's a brand new listing. But generally you can pay no premium above list price. You can probably even get seller concessions. So you're paying $650,000 for that home. You're going to do the same $180,000 down payment because you've got the same amount of cash. So the total investment is $180,000. Your loan amount is $470,000. We've got these terrible rates of 6.875. Your payment is $3,087 a month. So when you have this higher rate, what happens? Well, the client does have to pay as much as $1,000 more. But what did they not have to pay? They don't have to pay a $50,000 premium to buy the property. So if I'm going to pay $1,000 more per month, but I don't have to pay $50,000 additional for the property, that means that I can own this property for 50 months before this extra $1,000 becomes more expensive than paying a premium. Okay. So when rates go back to 3%, guess what we're going to see? That exact scenario. First off, I don't think rates are going to go back to 3%, but if they do, people are going to have to pay a really, really huge premium. And you want to walk your buyers through this. Now, Eric, did you have something?
Yeah, you said if rates go down to 3%, I kind of snuck in there and said, if we have another pandemic,
Right. If somebody else eats another bat in China, right. If we get a pandemic and we get rates to 3%, this is what's going to happen. Really big premiums. All right. But that's probably not too likely. So you need to adjust your buyers' expectations to the realities of the current market and show them, hey, yes, I understand it's $1,000 more every single month, but you don't have to pay this $50,000 premium. And keep in mind, there are properties that are always available. All right. Competition is lower now. And we looked at the trends earlier. There are a heck of a lot more properties to choose from than there were back in January of 22. So I think right now is still a really, really good time to buy. Particularly, you don't have to pay that big premium.
Yeah, I don't know.
This is where good agents, earn their business, so to speak, is you give them good advice, talk to them about their location, talk to them about their condition, get the right price on the property. If you have those three things, they're selling quickly.
That's right.
And ask, if not over ask still. So if you do your job and get them prepared, and I think you said it earlier, set the expectations of what you're looking to achieve with your transaction, then you can get the job done for them.
Yep.
I remember, mid 2020 through mid 22-ish or whatever, when we had the insane, pandemic induced real estate market.
Mm-hmm.
And buyers were really unhappy then, because not only were they waiving a lot of contingencies, including their appraisal contingencies, but it was exactly this scenario where they were having to come in with 10, 15% more or above the list price in guaranteed cash, because they were having to waive their appraisal contingencies. Mm-hmm. And instead of that money going into the equity of the property, it just went into the seller's pocket.
That's right.
So even though their payments are higher now, at least their down payment is going into the equity of the property, not just the seller's pocket. Right. And I think that some buyers don't understand that, because they don't see, they can't visualize it the way you've shown it here, Joe. Mm-hmm. And I know for a fact that there's a lot of lenders that probably aren't that good at explaining this, and certainly a lot of real estate agents that may not be able to have this conversation with their client. And by the way, if you are a real estate agent, you should be letting your lender have this conversation if they're capable.
Yeah, I'll do this. I don't want you guys to try and memorize that, and I don't want you to try and memorize this next slide either. I'll handle that for you. And so the last point I wanted to touch on in this section is there's still opportunities for buyers to trade up. All right. So let's say over here on the left, we've got a home that was purchased 5 years ago for $410,000, right? That was our base price, and they got an FHA loan. Well, the value of that home is now increased up to $598,000, maybe more. Their original loan was $395,000. They've made payments on it every single month at 2.3% and $2,300 a month, and an interest rate of 4.875. Now, we hear a lot of people that say, I have a 4% rate, I have a 3% rate, I have a 2% rate, I'm never moving. Well, that's true. I have no dispute with that, except for the fact that you're going to move when something changes in your life. You're going to get married, you're going to get divorced, you're going to have a kid, an elderly parent's going to need to move in with you. Something is going to occur that's going to require you to move at some point in your future. Now, they've paid this loan down to $362,000. When they sell this property, net of costs, they're going to walk away with $235,000. And we're going to take all of that equity and we're going to apply it over here and we're going to buy a new home for $730,000. We're going to get a new conventional loan. Interest rates have gone up, not the end of the world. Their new payment, $3,250. Okay, so their payment does go up. We all can agree on that. And what's going to happen here is the new purchase price minus the loan amount. Guess how much they're putting down? That exact amount that they got from the proceeds of their sale. And what does that do to their payment? It goes up because it's a bigger house, but the client gets a home worth $130,000 more than their current home for a total cost of only $877 a month. Now, $130,000 trade up is likely a better school district, nicer kitchen, bigger home, more bedrooms, more bathrooms, lots of different reasons why people might want to trade up. And we need to remind people it is actually still a good time to do that because of how much equity you've built over here on scenario number one. So it's really important to make sure that we are not letting them get distracted by higher interest rates because they probably want a newer, nicer, better finished home. And this is how you can help them do that. So any questions on this one?
You know, while we're waiting for somebody to put something in the chat, I think 5 years ago, 410 is what our median price was. At least it was around that.
Yep.
So just to put things in perspective, buyers that wait, and in one of my earlier slides, I showed the median price is 600 now. So anybody who has been waiting has missed out on almost $190,000 worth of appreciation because there were people in 2019 that guess what? Were waiting. They were waiting for prices to come down.
Yep.
They were waiting for interest rates. I remember, Joe, I think it was 2018 when we went from, I think, 4.5% to 5% interest rates.
I remember that very clearly.
And people were freaking out about 5%. And what do you think people would do if they could get 5% now?
They would drink champagne.
Oh, geez, it would. So it's all perspective, right? Okay, so I'm going to blow through some of the slides here pretty quickly because at the end, we have 10 slides that I really want to talk about. 10 things and this is the main reason for you guys to be on the call today, I think. 10 things that you need to do, that you must do to succeed in real estate. So can one of you take a look at that chat there?
Yeah, it was MB commenting, just like during COVID, buyers who said, oh, I'll wait until housing prices come down. Try to explain to the buyers, you can't have it both ways. It's either lower interest rates or possibly a lower price on a home. You're not going to get both.
Spot on.
It's fact, yeah.
Yep.
Waiting has just never worked. You know, in my 34 years doing this, I can think of one time where waiting made sense and nobody knew that it made sense until it was already gone.
Right.
So in 2006, if you said, I'm going to wait to see if prices come down, well, guess what? 2007, 2008, prices came down. And we already showed you the slide as to why that happened. We had almost 30,000 homes on the market and we were only selling 5,000 a month, right? So in 2006, if you waited a couple of years, you were like, wow, I'm the smartest person in the room. I paid 10% less for my house than I would have paid 2 years ago. But if you take out that little sliver of time, the rest of the last 50 years, it's always been more expensive to wait.
Yep. And that's going to be true now. We're going to look back in 5 years and people are going to say, man, I really wish I would have bought a home in 2024.
Right. Because prices are still creeping up. It's
right.
slowed down, but they're still creeping up.
Still going up.
Joe, I don't know if you want to touch on this or if you've already.
No, this is just from the seller's perspective on a 2-1 buy down. Let's go ahead and move along.
Okay. So I'm going to skip through this because I really want to get to the 10 things, because we are going to talk about the fundamentals and some of these other things. We're going to talk about, and I'm going to say this is important, your conversion rates. So when you think about a conversion rate, it's basically the number of people you have to talk to close a deal. And you will need to talk to a lot more people in 2024 and 2025 to close a deal than you would have had to, say, in the last, decade. And the reason is you have sellers that are holding on to their mortgages. So your current database might have fed you 10 listings a year. Well, now you're gonna get 4, right? You might normally talk to 10 buyers and 8 of them decide they want to buy a house. Well, now you're going to talk to 10 buyers and 4 are going to be able to actually buy a house. So the number of connections that you made before isn't going to get it done anymore. You're going to have to talk to a lot more people, which means you're going to have to grow your database. So whatever size your database is right now, I would set a goal to grow it by 1 or 2 people a week, because you're going to have more conversations to close deals. If you're doing everything, if you're sitting around going, wow, I'm doing everything I've always done and it's not working, that's why. You're not going on enough appointments. You're not talking to enough people. You have to grow your database. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. We already talked about being a pro, understanding the market. We'll talk about your value. We put in here sales are going to drop for a while. This original PowerPoint was built a year ago. So sales have dropped. And
We're
I think
experiencing it.
And I think they're going to stay where they are for a while.
I think so too.
And keep in mind, buyers aren't just fighting high interest rates. Homeowners insurance, hazard insurance, and taxes are up too.
Everything. Yep. Everybody just likes to talk about interest rates because it's so obvious. The flat cost of owning a home right now, Eric, if you buy a condo, $200 for insurance, $300 for taxes, $300 for HOA, it's $800 even before you talk about paying $1 in interest, before you even talk about the interest rate. And people don't realize it, but that's only going to go in one direction, and it's going to be more difficult in the future.
Agreed. Yeah. So number 7 here, I just talked about, this is your time to be an expert and take market share away from the unprepared. The tougher the market gets, the harder it is on people that never developed what I consider their core skills. And the longer the market conditions we're in now last, the more people you're going to see start to drop out of the business, which means that those of you who are prepared are going to benefit from those transactions that would normally have gone to the agents that don't know what the hell they're doing, right? Because these market shifts do push a lot of people out, and you need to be the one that's not getting pushed out, and 2, gets that business from those people that are gone. The key to it though is you're going to have to be a lot more skilled than your competitors. You're going to have to be good at setting expectations. I'm going to kind of get through some of this stuff because I want to get to the list of 10 things here. All right, we have the positives are homes are still going to sell. Sellers might be a little more cooperative. And then over time, I think you'll feel less pressure to lower your fee. The NAR settlement obviously is going to put a little bit of pressure on everybody. But once things settle down, I think the consumer is going to be a lot more focused on the skill set of their agent.
I agree.
Than they are just what the fees are. Provided you're able to sell your value. You know the saying, right? In absence of value, it becomes price.
Mm-hmm.
People go out and people buy our Mercedes over, say, like a Hyundai. Nothing against Hyundais, but it's the perception of value. They pay more, right? The cars do exactly the same thing, but people will pay more for things that they perceive to be more valuable.
Hey, you want to hear something funny? I heard a story yesterday that blew my mind, which I never knew. And it was I was talking with a mechanic, and he said Bentleys have the worst engine known to mankind.
Yep, that's actually true.
You said a Benz?
Bentley.
Oh, Bentley?
Bentleys. $200,000 car plus minimum, right? Says they have the worst engines known to mankind. Literally, he has to take the entire chassis out of the engine, out of the car in order to do an oil change. So he charges him like $12,000
for an oil change.
Yes, blew my mind.
Well, I'm selling my Bentley then.
That's why you don't see a lot of them on the road, because people don't want to drive them, because then the more you drive it, the more you have to service it, right?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, just look at what people will pay money for. I mean, we can pick on Starbucks, but for whatever reason, people are willing to pay $6-7 for a cup of coffee. So we know people will pay for things that they like. But if Starbucks, and there's so many coffee places now, maybe Starbucks is even a fair example, but there was a time when, Starbucks was like the only game in town for coffee, other than like Dunkin' Donuts or, a coffee shop. So we know that if you can put something out there that people see value in, they'll pay for it. But if you're just doing the same old stuff as everyone else, then I think you're going to have a tough time. You're not going to be able to sell your value. And your value, by the way, shouldn't just be, well, I work really hard, because that's one of those things that's expected, right?
Yeah, you're supposed to work hard. You're in a hard job.
To work hard. That's not a freaking value add. It's like, if that's the best you can do, I work really hard. You got to be able to sell more than that. And by the way, we have classes on that. So let's talk about this. I was more excited to talk about this than anything else today, probably, maybe because I just put this together. So let's talk about the top 10 strategies to succeed and tips to get those implemented. Number 1, invest in comprehensive training and mentoring. Mentoring more so for newer agents. Training is one of those things that I don't care how many years you've been in the business, you need to spend a lot of time taking classes on things you want to know more about, taking classes on things you need to get better at. You're never at that point in your career where you should be able to go, I don't need to take classes anymore because I'm just that good. You're not. There's always an area that you can improve upon. So if you're brand new, then you're going to want to take a lot of the classes. If you're experienced, you're going to want to take the classes that you need to know more about, things you need to know more about, I should say, or maybe even teach a class if you're real experienced, because, I've become sort of the de facto contract expert with Your Castle, and I never set out to do that. It became that way because I started teaching contracts classes, which forced me to understand in depth what those agreements said and why. So I learned more by teaching classes than I did selling real estate as far as contracts go. So just tap into the training. Don't just think that you don't need it, right? And if you're new in the business, you need to really focus on your core skills. You shouldn't be calling your manager, at 9 o'clock at night and saying, I have a listing appointment tomorrow. How do I do a CMA? It's at that point, it's too late. That's like me calling Joe and saying, Joe, I know you've run some marathons. I have one tomorrow. What should I do? It's too late, right?
It's too late to train.
Train before the game, not at the game, right?
Right.
Having a business plan. If I had to guess, how many, Joe, Jerrod, either one of you that want to answer, how many real estate agents do you think actually have a written business plan?
10%.
15%.
I was going to say like 6%.
Yeah.
I think it's even amongst people who are very high producers, you'd be surprised how many of them don't actually have a written business plan.
Yeah.
and they don't even have to be the most comprehensive, like you're applying for a small business loan type of plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
You just need to know how much money you want to make, how many deals it takes to get you there, how many people you need to talk to get there, right? What your marketing budget is. It doesn't have to be crazy, but agents that have a business plan far outperform the agents that don't. They've got bigger pipelines. They've got better lead generation things in place. So take a class on how to do a business plan. Meet with a manager. I mean, if you're a York Castle agent, our managers will sit down and do a business plan with you. If you're with another company, go to your manager and say, let's sit down and create a business plan, right? And you can even download forms online for free. I think Excel even has one, right?
Yeah.
But you got to have a plan. I mean, any other business out there, can you imagine opening any other business in the world and not having a plan?
With no idea on how you're going to do it?
No idea. I'm just my whole plan is I love houses and I love people. It's like, that ain't a plan. That means you've never had a client, honestly, if you still love people.
That's like me opening a donut shop. Joe, why did you decide to open a donut shop? Well, I love donuts. That doesn't mean I'm going to be good at it.
Right. I mean, if I followed that line of thinking, I would have a Mexican restaurant that served martinis. Hey, I love martinis and I love Mexican food, so I'll just open a restaurant. No,
I'd be a client.
Well, who knows? It might be a good thing. I just gave away like a big secret. But yeah, you got to have a plan. You've got to find a way to separate yourself from other people. This is what I call branding. And I don't think you have to go out and hire an expert. You just need to find something that when people see it, it looks different than maybe what somebody else's stuff looks like. What doesn't look unique is you holding the phone, or posing with your dog, right? Something that sets you apart from everybody else. And I love dogs and I love phones, but you want to have a good marketing strategy. And if you're new in the business, or you don't have a big marketing budget, your strategy might be a lot of open houses, networking events, picking up the phone and just reaching out to your sphere of influence. And then as you grow, then that's when you can start maybe having a branded website and some things like that. But you want to set aside enough time and enough in your marketing budget to help you build a brand.
I agree.
Yeah, these days you can build a website for nothing.
Hell, if you use KV Core, you get it included in the price.
Exactly.
I set my website up
you
on
can,
KV
you can get
Core.
the big branded one at some point, but you can keep it simple, stupid to start, and that's all you need.
Now, what about this? Consistently generate qualified leads and build a pipeline.
So many people don't do this.
Yep.
I feel like we could just teach. We don't even need 10 things to grow your business. It could be this one.
Yeah, just do this one. Ignore the other 9.
Yeah, but then it would be a really short class if we just talked about this one slide. But I'm going to talk about this in 2 pieces. One is the lead part. The other is the pipeline part. When you are in business, your job is to promote your business and be actively seeking out people that want to patronize your business. And I don't care if you're selling shoes or serving martinis at your Mexican restaurant or doing loans like Joe or title like Jerrod. You need to dedicate a certain amount of your time to finding business.
Yep.
And marketing alone ain't going to get it done. I can tell you that. You can send out mass mailings. The one that drives me crazy the most is freaking email crap. Mm-hmm. And Joe, you and I went to a thing a while back where we were going to be speakers, and I made the mistake of putting my business card in someone's fishbowl.
Oh.
You might be getting the same
Turbo
just
tenant.
emails I'm getting every day.
Yeah.
I haven't received a single call, by the way, not one.
Yeah.
All I'm getting is spammed
Every day. Yep.
and I just, first of all, I unsubscribed. And then have you ever noticed when you unsubscribe from something, they have to get one more dig in and send you an email telling you you're unsubscribed. It's like, we're going to send you one more.
And then they like double up, right? If you unsubscribe, it makes it worse.
It does. So if you're just sitting out there spamming people in your email, that ain't going to get it done. That's not what we call generating leads or building a pipeline. That's just annoying. So this is when you need to get on the phone, reach out to your sphere, do some open houses, do some networking events, do some charity work, participate in your kids' school, build a good social media presence. There's so many things that you can do that actually don't even cost money. And from that, you start to talk to people who express an interest in real estate, right? And not all of them are people that are going to buy a house in 12 months or less. Some of those people might be on your pipeline list for 2 years, 3 years. I talk to agents all the time that say, I closed a deal from somebody I met at an open house 3 years ago, but I stayed in touch with them. They stayed in the pipeline, right? So your pipeline is going to be the people who are ready now, the people who are ready way down the road. Some are kind of in between. But if I ever say, like, hey, Joe, what's your year looking like? You should be able to say, well, right now I've got about 20 people in my pipeline. I think maybe 7 or 8 of them are serious. But you should be able to answer that question. But if I ask you, what do you have in your pipeline, and you can't give me an answer, it means you're not generating any kind of leads and you're not doing anything to build a pipeline. Because I'll tell you, you have more people in your pipeline than you think you do. You're just not talking to them enough, so they're going to end up buying a house from someone else.
Yep. The pipeline is there, whether you are interacting with it or not. If you choose not to interact with that pipeline, somebody else is going to get those deals.
Right. And you got to know your numbers. I put down here at the bottom, I talk about how, internet leads have about a 3% conversion rate. That's probably higher than it actually is, which means you need 100 internet leads to close 3 deals. So if your plan is to get internet leads, you got to know the numbers. If you're only getting 1 or 2 leads a month, you're not going to close jack off those. And a lot of them take a year to convert.
Yeah.
Same with open houses. If you want to close 6 or 8 deals a year off open houses, you need to do them every weekend. You're not going to do 3 open houses and go, these don't work. I'm not going to do them anymore. And then an interesting stat, can't remember where I read it. It takes 6 contacts before someone you meet remembers your name. So that person you met at the open house that you don't call for a year, they don't even know your name when you finally do get back in touch with them. Won't spend a lot of time on this because you have to be making money, I think, to start really worrying about managing your expenses. But you definitely want to have a budget. This is part of your business plan. You need to know what you're spending on stuff. And something else I think you want to avoid is don't have a good month and then go buy the expensive car. I'm seeing a lot of agents right now that built their spending habits around what they were making 2 years ago.
Yep.
And they're hurting now. I think you always have to plan a 25% reduction in business.
Yep.
We try to do everything we can to avoid it, but sudden shifts in interest rates, things like that can slow you down for a bit.
Rainy day fund.
Yeah, you got to
15% out of every deal to stick, that I didn't pay myself and put in a rainy day fund.
And it's a little cloudy right now, so it's a good thing you got that.
Yeah.
Well, we could go into a lot of different areas here, but but I see a lot of agents when they're figuring their budget, they don't factor in things like putting money in a retirement account. They look at just the real estate deal itself. Well, I'm going to make X amount of money, and this is how much my marketing is going to cost. But you're a business person. You still have to fund a retirement account for yourself. You have to pay taxes. You probably want to put some, or like, like Jerrod said, a rainy day money aside. You still want to go on vacation, so it needs to be run like a business. This one, some people may or may not agree with. I very, very much agree with it. If you're ever going to be the best you can be in any profession, but I think real estate in particular, you got to somehow find a way to go full time. And I understand there might be a transition period, because you're going to go from maybe a salaried position to a commission position. But I don't know. I shouldn't say I don't know anyone. I know like a couple of people that have found a way to make it work to do real estate part time. But the overwhelming percentage of people never reach their potential as an agent being part time, because you can't go to a lot of the training classes. You're not always available when your client might need you. There's just a lot of things you can't do when you're part time. So I know some really good part time agents, but they would be better, even better, if they were full time. So try to find a way to make that happen. And that's going to be even more important, I think, with all of these other changes coming down the pike. There's going to be a smaller pool of clients just because sales are down, and you're going to be competing as an agent with other agents, and the agent who says I'm full time, I'm available 40 hours a week, versus the agent that says I'm really good and I work hard, but I'm only available 15 hours a week. The consumer might base a decision on who they hire just on how on your availability, right? I think your personal relationships with people are going to matter less in the upcoming years than your skill set.
I think that's exactly right. I think your personal relationships will put people into your pipeline, but then your skill set is going to determine whether or not you're going to be the agent that closes those deals in the pipeline, or is another agent going to close those deals in the pipeline.
Right. CRM. Everybody should have a CRM. And I should say how to implement. What I should say is actually use the CRM. We have, Joe, as you know, Jerrod, as you might know, we have a very robust CRM we offer our agents called KV Core. It's a CRM. It's got campaigns in it. It's got a website. It has lead generation tools, letters. I mean, you name it. It has everything. Almost too much. It's almost too much for me. But we have it out there. And out of all the people who have signed up and set up their account, only about 40% actively use the CRM. That means 60% of the people who are paying for it don't use it. And you know what they're probably saying? Oh, these CRMs don't work.
I really wish I had more deals.
Yeah, I wish I had more deals. No one's calling me. The CRM's not working. It's like it works if you use it. And Joe, what's your saying when it comes to CRMs?
Oh, the best CRM is the one you use. People ask us all the time, should I use this or should I use that? The answer is you should use the one that you will log into and utilize every single day.
Every day.
So far we've got 7 things that I'm telling you right now, if you did them, if you do these 7 things, you will have business, right? But we have 10, so we've got 3 more to go. I love this one. Now, for some of you, this won't mean anything yet, but I can tell you, as you grow your business and you get busier, this is going to be really important for your survival in the business, right? These first 7 things were a lot about getting going, but if you get busy, and it happens to us in real estate, thinking we have to be available 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, you can only work that at that pace for so long. So once you get to the point where you are starting to get stuff going, try to create a somewhat regular schedule that you can follow. Set a time of day and let your clients know, I don't work past 7 p.m. or whatever. And you'll be amazed how many times your clients say, "Oh, that makes total sense. I get it." Right? Set your hours, and then maybe even have a standard day off that you try to take during the week. Because if you don't and you get busy, you can get burned out real fast. If you're the broker whose my value proposition is I'm available anytime you call, you're going to get burned out. That shouldn't be your value proposition, by the way. I'm available all the time. And then, of course, leveraging your network, the people that you know, your sphere of influence, the people that you know and the people that they know are still going to be your most active source of business and referrals. People who you don't know are probably not going to send you referrals, right? I've never met this guy. I've never met this Jerrod Paterson guy, but let me refer you to him. It just doesn't work like that, right? So if the people you know that you probably like you, they probably want to see you do well, and they want to send you referrals, but they usually only want to send referrals if they believe that you're gonna, because nobody wants to send a referral and then get a phone call later saying, "Oh, hey, Eric, you told me to call this guy. I called him, he didn't even return my call." Right? So nobody wants to send bad referrals. So make sure that you're in touch with your network. Don't be the drunkest one at the barbecue. Don't be the drunkest one at the family reunion. Just always put yourself out there to where people are like, "Man, this Jerrod guy's got his shit together. Joe, man, he's got his act together." But your personal network will always be where most of your referrals come from. So don't be afraid to talk to your friends and your family and your acquaintances. And you should be in touch with your sphere at least 10 times a year, way more than most people think.
Mm-hmm. And Eric, I am proud to tell you, Eric, I did not touch one drop of alcohol yesterday at the company golf tournament. So I was not the drunkest one at the golf tournament.
Well, and frankly, most of the people there were agents that weren't going to give me any business. So I probably could have got away with a little bit yesterday because no one there was going to hire me. But you, on the other hand, get a lot of your business from agents. So yeah, yep. You don't want to be, face down in the punch, Yeah.
That's right.
Same with Jerrod. A lot of his business comes from agents. So you guys were the ones pushing the alcohol on every.
I was on the straight and narrow yesterday, man. I'm like a bartender. I'm not touching any of that stuff, but I'll give you as much as you want.
I don't drink when I golf because I'm not a good golfer anyway.
Exactly.
I can't.
Things just get worse.
Yeah.
Plus, I do have to kind of lead by example, and being face down in the punch bowl or getting into a drunken brawl like we had last year, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Glad we skipped that.
Yeah. So here's another big one, and this is something I see a lot right now. Like I can't even tell you how much. Even with some of our really experienced agents. I'm going to look at the chat here, see if somebody has something here.
I don't think we had anything.
No,
that's the same chat. Okay. So this is something I've seen so much, probably in the last, since rates have gone up, right? And since the cost of everything else have gone up. I see agents spending a lot of time with people who just ain't going to buy or sell. And I do these accountability calls every week, and every week they'll bring up the same client. Yeah, my client, I thought they were ready. We went out and looked at a couple houses. I thought they were going to write an offer, and then they found something they didn't like on the house. So back to square one, right? The next week, it's like, yep, those same clients, they told me they were ready. I found them the perfect house, and they were going to write, and then they called me and said they changed their mind, and you can go insane spending a lot of time with people like this.
Mm-hmm.
And what you should be doing is taking all of that very frustrating time and putting that into calling your database, scheduling some coffee appointments. I know it feels like you're working like, oh, I just showed a house. So it feels like you're doing the right thing. But when you have somebody who's really unmotivated, and some of the phrases you'll hear from really unmotivated buyers is, if I can find the perfect house, I'll buy, right? If I can find exactly this, and they've got a detailed list of 10 things that I got to have all of these things. And if I can find this, and if I can find it at the right price, and it's in the neighborhood I want, if we can make that happen, then I'll buy. Well, you're setting yourself up for a very frustrating relationship because that's just not realistic. You want buyers to say things like, I'm ready. I really need to buy. My lease is up next month and I'd really like to be under contract by the time my lease is up. That's the kind of stuff you want to hear. Same with sellers. Sellers that are like, if I can sell my house for what I'd like to sell it for, then I'll sell. Well, that's going to require a lot more probing from me because one, maybe the price that they want is realistic. If that's the case, we can work together. But if I'm sitting there at the listing appointment and all of my comparable sales say that it's worth, say, 600, or that's what it's likely should be listed at, and all of my comparable sales were from March, or April or May, and they're going to put their house on in July, and they want to go 650, I am 1000% wasting my time with them, and frankly, wasting their time. And because taking a listing that you can't sell, one, it lets everyone on the block know that you got it wrong. Because when your sign comes down and the next sign goes up, everyone on that block saw that sign with your name on a house you couldn't sell, right? That seller will never refer anyone to you. You're the one that didn't get it done, right? So you're better off not having those deals than you are having them. A client that doesn't lead to a closing is really just it's not good for your business. It's not good for your mind, and you need to take that time and put it somewhere else. This is really hard for new agents because new agents want to say yes to everyone, and I get it. You want to help people, but the minute you feel like they can't or won't move forward in a transaction, then you just have the conversation of like, look, I really want to help you. I can tell you're not quite ready yet, and I don't want to pressure you. So why don't we just put things on hold for now, and I'll stay in touch. And then when you're ready, we can always come back, right? That's how you exit those deals. All right, those are the 10 guaranteed life-changing things that if you do them, they will change the course of your business. So any questions? Because we are close.
We are just about right. I'm pretty impressed by our timing on this, Eric.
So MB wrote something else. It's also really important to ask your clients, what are your expectations of me? I love that question. I recently worked for a friend, didn't have the conversation, and then she fired me when I didn't meet her expectations. So MB, I wish I knew who you were, MB, because that's a really, really good point. If you don't set the expectations, your client will. And their expectations are usually unreasonable as hell. And friends and family, frankly, ones that tend to set the most unrealistic expectations. My younger brother, and Joe, you know my brother, and my brother's awesome. He's one of the greatest, nicest people on the planet. But he would call me at like 6 o'clock in the morning to talk about his deal that we were doing together. And I had to tell him, I'm like, look, bro, I mean, I love you. If you want to call me at 6 in the morning and talk about fishing, let's talk about fishing. Let's talk about, but I'm like, I'm not working right now. I haven't even had my second cup of coffee. I am not ready to talk about real estate. And he was a little bit annoyed, but I think he got it. But that was a conversation I should have had with him before we started working together, right? So I appreciate everybody who's here. It looks like all of you stayed till the end, which is awesome. We really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everyone for being here. Joe and Jerrod, appreciate your time as always as well. And we'll catch all you on the next class.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, guys. A lot of fun.